Welcome to Shelf Help. Today we're speaking with Sara Hendershot, VP of Marketing at Loonen, the new ultra premium bottled water brand that's tested for over 300 contaminants, bottled in premium glass. Prior to Loonen, Sara was Director of Marketing at Momentous, really well known sports nutrition supplement brand. Also, two-time world champion, 2012 Olympic rower for Team USA. So, knows branding, especially in the health and wellness and high performance space. So, yeah, super excited to dive into it. Sarah, maybe just first off, for the listeners that aren't as familiar with Loonen, love to just start off just getting a quick lay of the land, just in terms of origin story, why behind the brand, core products in the lineup, and then we'll take it from there.
Totally. Well, thanks, Adam, for having me on.
Sure.
Yes, we've had an exciting year so far at Loonen. We are a new glass bottled water brand on the market, and I've been with the team working on this project for about a year, which has felt a little bit like 10 years in some ways because there's so many things have happened and there's been a lot of evolution just in that time period. But it's been a lot of fun, and this is honestly my favorite phase of working on brands. Momentous and Loonen are two of those names, but I've worked across a bunch of different brands, and this stage of, like, building and really seeing the impact of the work you're putting in, I find to be so much fun. You work across everything, but it's very rewarding. And so, yeah, quick and dirty on Loonen. We've been live in the market for just 6 months, so we spent a good amount of time laying the foundation for the brand and the product and really getting our operations up and running before launching. We launched right at the end of last year, and so in 6 months, we've done quite a lot. We've learned a lot. And the idea really was that we wanted to be able to launch with a truly trustworthy, really high quality water that was doing things differently than what is existing in the market outside of Loonen. And what that looks like actually evolved throughout the process of us getting ready to launch as well. And what our vision and image for what truly pure water was actually shifted and changed as we learned as well. But what we are now, and the easiest way I think to describe us, is that we're really the first spring sourced purified water on the market. We combine these two processes that have current or who that have in the past lived totally independently, where you've either been a spring water or you've been a purified water, and both of them have their own issues. And we are now the first that is sourcing from super high quality spring. We're then filtering for purity to make sure that contaminants that sometimes naturally make their way into springs don't exist within our water. We're then remineralizing with super high quality minerals like Celtic sea salt instead of table salt. Then we're only ever bottling in glass, and we test our finished goods for over 350 contaminants. Those results are on the back of every single bottle. So the consumer can actually see what's exactly in this bottle that I'm drinking, which is far and away like more rigorous than what's required by the FDA and what else is happening in the industry. So yeah, that's kind of the quick of what we are. And then I'm happy to share more on like the inspiration behind it too, if that's of interest.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I think what's kind of cool is our team is tiny right now. We don't even have a dozen team members yet. And everybody has come to this brand with a different bit of a story and a different attraction to like what they latch onto the most. Our two co-founders, Clara and David, they were really like the brain people behind this idea, the ones who really started to work on this initially and helped to get it kickstarted and come to life. Clara was previously on the investment side and worked across a bunch of different consumer brands. David has a long-standing career across consumer brands as well, but especially in beverage. He was like number two at Spindrift for the first 10 years of the business and ran all their operations. And so they knew each other through working on different portfolio projects. But Clara, when she went to go start her family, really was inspired by this. She had a hard time getting pregnant, had to go through IVF, and through that process, really learned everything there is to know about endocrine disruptors and where those show up in our environment, including in water, as being a huge source of that. And when she went to completely flip basically, a lot of her lifestyle habits in every category, there was an easy solution and there wasn't a good solution in water. And she tells the story about how she was renting at the time. And so she ended up basically creating like a water lab on her countertop because there was no other way to truly feel like she could filter and then remineralize and have a high quality product that she super trusted. So that's kind of where the initial idea of Loonen was inspired by, was trying to fill this this problem that they saw, right? There was this area that like wasn't being thought about. And David came at this too with his experience from Spindrift, having really focused on the quality of that product, but then putting them in aluminum cans, which are plastic lined. And so there's going to be, some of that shedding from the container that you're putting your drinks in. And we didn't want to ever have that be an issue. And that's why glass is the only answer to that for us. But
Totally.
for me, I felt like my connection to this comes from my background in athletics, in that, like, for so many years, I thought about every single thing that went into my body and every part of my routine. And, like, how was I going to try to optimize my performance? I needed to try to be the best in the world in my category. And as I've continued to work on different projects, I have realized as a now retired athlete that there were things that I was leaving on the table or categories that I hadn't ever thought about. And when I started at Momentous, I realized I hadn't really thought about supplementation the way that I had because I couldn't trust that category and I wasn't educated on what NSF certified means. And now I'm working on Loonen and I'm like, I've never thought about my water as being the vehicle for all of my nutrition and all of my recovery. It is the thing that we consume the most of. It is the majority of what our body is made of. And I never really thought about that. And so now, as like a regular professional human with 2 kids and not a full-time athlete anymore, I try to make decisions that help me, really like prioritize my health without over optimizing.
Hmm.
And water is an area that I am actually paying a lot of attention to now.
It feels like the bottled water category seems to be in a kind of an interesting spot right now. It's obviously one of the biggest beverage categories in the world. But I think the whole reason that Luna's kind of started, I think, was like on the other hand, just consumer trust just feels like it's certainly a pretty low point, whether it's PFAS or all these microplastics you mentioned, or just like it seemed like the stuff is a lot more all over the headlines these days, which obviously makes sense why people have been more skeptical. What's your just overall take on the current state of the bottled water category and what has changed more recently that's gotten us here?
Yeah. Well, I look at this in a few different ways. The water category is massive, right? It's huge. And it's because it's not an occasion drink. It's an all day, every day, multiple times a day a product, right? You could have multiple lunens every day and like really benefit from that and enjoy it, right? So it's a very big category and it's not like there hasn't been premiumization that has existed in this category previously. It has. It's just the consumer really hasn't gotten anything for it. So they've marked up their prices and have maybe done some nice branding, but there's not really something truly premium about what's in the bottle that's helping the consumer make that connection of like, yes, I'm willing to pay for this because of all this extra that I'm getting. So I think that's one area. It's just kind of been like this dusty old not innovative category that was begging to have somebody come in and do something differently. And then I think the other side of it was there is a problem there that we are coming in trying to solve, right? And I think that that's in the past where I have seen brands and sometimes founders really kind of fail is that they're sort of creating a problem and then trying to work a solution into something that doesn't really exist versus saw there was this problem and nobody was doing anything about it. And when we started to look into why was nobody doing anything about it, it's because it's operationally very challenging and it's expensive, right? There are so many easy corners to cut here. There's so many easy things to do that like could save us a ton of money in different steps. And we'd be allowed to do that. The FDA says, sure, no problem. You only have to test once a year, right? Or you can store your bottled water in plastic and there's no expiration date to them. And we can put them in not temperature controlled trucks and put them under fluorescent lights on the grocery store shelves and just let that plastic degrade over time. And you can not test finished goods. You can just test the source, right? So there's so many different things that could have been done. And the reason why nobody was doing this is because it's challenging, right? So we're coming in and we're really trying to think about each one of those steps, and it is definitely making it so that there are challenges throughout this process. But I think it makes it so that we're also differentiated and people are noticing those differences.
What does that sourcing process look like for Loonen? Do you have a team on the ground that's like going all over the world sourcing the best spring water? You have one that you kind of nailed down?
Yeah, it's a cool question because again, this is another way that we're doing things differently right now. It is definitely an ongoing process, but the current spring that we are sourcing from is outside of San Diego, and it is one of the dozens of springs that Clara and David visited. And when I tell you, like, there are some hilariously crazy stories of them like hiking up mountains to go and visit these springs in person and actually see where they exist. There was a lot of that. But actually, the inspiration for our brand name, Loonen, I think really aligns with how we are sourcing from springs. So and this is our little bottle. I have it sitting here. You see that there's like a loon on the front of it. And that's because we are inspired by the water bird, the loon.
Okay.
I knew nothing about loons before joining Loonen, and I should have because I'm from the Northeast and they're a Northeast water bird. But they exist a lot in northern states and throughout Canada. Clara grew up spending her summers on a lake in Vermont that had loons that lived there, and so she knew all about them, and they're fascinating birds. They are like the quote, the phrase "crazy as a loon" comes from loons. But one of the features that I think is so amazing about them is that they are monogamous to a single lake for their entire life, even as they're having migratory patterns. So they'll leave in the summer, or in the winter, they'll, fly south, they'll come back in the summer, but they come back to that same exact lake for the entirety of their lives, unless that lake becomes polluted or contaminated. And if it becomes contaminated, they leave and they don't come back. And so we think about our sourcing very similarly, right? Like we have found a spring, the one that we're currently using, and we will open other springs but they have to reach our very high standards. And if they reach those standards and we've tested them and the quality is great, then awesome. We can source from that spring. But springs are ever changing and our world is this global interconnected water system. And so things do change and shift. And with this process, we are not wedding ourselves to a single source. We're saying, like, hey, if this changes, we will leave and we'll go to another great source that we have also found. But that's a big difference than what a lot of our competition is doing, who have wed themselves to a single source. And then when there's an issue with that source, they run into trouble because either then there's contamination or they've overtapped it or they have problems then staying in stock because of that. And so we are not going to have that problem because we follow the same philosophy as a loon.
Where do you feel like the line is between properly educating the consumer and just leading with fear?
Yeah, we talked about this a lot before we launched because it's definitely an area that we wanted to be very conscious of. I don't want to lead at all with fear mongering marketing. I think we all kind of get enough of that in our day to day lives in a million different places. Like, we don't need to be yelled at that we're making bad decisions in a different category, right? So, we make a really strong effort to not do that. And I think this is another signal that honestly our timing is really good right now because we don't have to tell that story. Like, the market's telling that story for us, right? That was part of the reason why we even, pursued this idea, is because there were so many scientists and experts in the space that were already talking about the impacts of microplastics on your health and what endocrine disruptors really do to your body long term, and how you should be thinking about your water as a key source of delivering your nutrients and like making sure that it's high quality. So that already was existing, and we're going to continue to let the experts really speak about what they know best. It's part of the reason why we have a scientific advisory board, is because they are the experts and we lean on them for their expertise in that, and they can help direct us towards the changing and growing and evolving research. But I think that's something that we're lucky enough right now that like the consumer is already waking up to that and is already paying attention to it. And the consumer in general is so much more educated than we've ever been. Like, we are paying attention, we care about the details. And so it's an area where we can just kind of share what we're doing differently and how we're part of the solution of, trying to fix this problem. We're not the entire solution, we're part of it though. And we'll let the consumer do a lot of that research on their own.
Mountain Valley Spring, they've grown 100% year over year. Liquid Death has obviously become a billion-dollar brand by putting water in cans, essentially. What's driving the premium water boom right now?
I mean, I really view Loonen as we're sitting in that glass bottled water set, right? We're not competing directly against the brands that are never going to stray from being bottled in these different vessels that are either plastic or plastic lined.
Mhm.
And so when you look at the other players in the glass bottled water set, I think again, it's like the consumer has started to wake up to the fact that microplastics are a real danger and something that they want to avoid, and that they can avoid within these big categories by making like one good decision that then impacts a lot, right? Like water and air are our two biggest areas that we are consuming microplastics. They're everywhere in our lives. There's no way to eliminate them to zero. You're not going to be able to do it. So it's like, don't try to get it to zero. But if you want to look at your two biggest categories that you can impact, water and air are those things, right? And so I think people are starting to recognize that, and glass is the solution for that problem. And so that's where I see the premium set taking off, and like a big part of that motivation behind it is that people care about glass, and it also becomes a very different drinking experience, right? Like you see that alcohol is an area that is starting to shift down, or has continued to shift down, and people want to still have this like enjoyable experience drinking whatever beverage it is that they are choosing. Water is a great one to be able to fill that category with, and when you drink out of a glass bottled water, there is something that feels a little more elevated about that, right? And we keep talking about Loonen as being premium, and yes, that is true. We are more expensive than like a regular kind of like gas station plastic water bottle. But part of this mission also is that we don't want to be unattainable. We don't want to be sitting at this outrageously expensive price on grocery store shelves that doesn't make this something that, any consumer can engage with it and enjoy. And so when we look at that set of other glass players, we are right in market there, and very, very purposeful with that, so that we are able to be, accessible across a larger market.
You kind of touch on this question in a few different ways as you're talking about the origin story. And just I don't know, hone all this in into a succinct answer. When thinking back to those earlier days when you guys are building out the initial brand identity, positioning, voice, visual identity, packaging side of things, what do you remember was the key variables that were really top of mind for you when you're actually working on and building this out? What do you remember was in the brief?
There were two really big things that we were thinking about as we were building this brand identity and the packaging and the labels and all of that. One of them was we really wanted to build what felt like a heritage brand, right? We didn't want to build something that was going to be a flash in the pan, that was going to be bright and loud and pop on shelf in that way just to try to grab people's attention, but then fade with a trend, right? We are very inspired by brands like Levi's and L.L.Bean, right? Like these brands that have been around forever that truly feel heritage in their design. And so you'll see that in our branding, right? The colors that we've chosen lean into that, the simplicity of the approach, the fonts that we're using, all of that like has this heritage side. And then I think the other piece of that is we needed to stand out on shelf. We needed to look different than everybody else that was going to be sitting in this glass bottled water set. And when you walk down the grocery store aisle and you look at all the different waters that are sitting there is a lot of similarity. There's a lot of clear glass with white or blue labels. There's a lot of green that sits there. We didn't want to be the same shape. We didn't want to be the same look. And so we're coming in with this yellow and blue as our core colors, which really pop on shelf next to everybody else. Like you don't see yellow really, besides maybe a couple of others. But like we stand out a lot there. And we wanted that to match kind of the tone that we're trying to bring as well, which is uplifting and hopeful and solution oriented. And I think you get that in our brand and packaging.
Well, you touched on pricing a little bit. Can you touch on a bit more about how you guys thought about pricing when you're going to market? How consumers have reacted to the pricing so far, and what's that process look like for you?
Yeah. Our pricing definitely varies based on where you find us, right? So I think that's something to be aware of, and that's something that we're like constantly aware of internally. We launched at Sprouts just last week, which is super exciting. They're our first national retailer. So if you have a Sprouts near us, you can now find Loonen, and we are $3.79 on shelf at Sprouts. And so that is, I think, like right in line with the other bottles that are next to us. And that was part of how we've thought about pricing, is we've gone out and done a lot of research on what else sits in the market and how can we make sure that we're competitive, but also giving this brand a chance to grow in a healthy way. Amazon is a different story, right? Like we launched on Amazon in December, like right as we were first going live, and we sell a 6-pack on Amazon. It's the only place that we sell a 6-pack. We don't offer that in retail. And we've done that also very purposefully. as a tool to help us have national distribution before we are in every market. We wanted to be able to have early adopters that got excited about what we stand for and what we've created and get us anywhere right to your doorstep. But it's very expensive to ship glass. So it's a much more expensive product on Amazon. And I think that can definitely look like a bit of maybe sticker shock and that we are sitting at this super expensive, like $6 bottle of water. And that is not the intention. That is only because we are shipping on Amazon that price is that way. And we'll continue to grow as a brand that is going to continue to evolve over time as we get economies of scale and as we continue to have more national distribution. But the idea is not to be premium in price as much as it is to be premium in the product that we're
Sure.
delivering.
Love that. In terms of what actually driving trial, what are you feeling like in terms of storytelling hooks are moving the needle the most?
Yeah, this is another one of my favorite parts of building a brand is right. Like we had all these hypotheses about what was going to be the biggest hook. And then there's nothing more valuable than getting out in market and actually hearing what is sticking. And so we've had some of our initial hypotheses broken and proven to be untrue. And the things that we're really kind of seeing now as these three leading points that people are latching onto is that we're spring sourced, that we're only ever bottled in glass, and that we have really high quality mineral content. I didn't expect the minerality to be something that people cared about as much, to
Hmm,
be honest. I
interesting.
thought that the testing was going to be super important. I thought that our QR code was going to be like such a selling point. And those are still super important and people definitely care about them, but they're secondary and they're kind of like post initial interaction with the brand that somebody can go deep and learn more and then really kind of get into the nitty-gritty there. But I think understanding that yes, both the process that we go through and the source really matter to the end result. You can't just think of one of those pieces and have that be a proxy for purity. You have to think about every single step along the way. That is resonating quite a bit. And then I think it kind of depends on the audience, right? Like there's a lot of different ways to get somebody excited about this and connect with their own personal story. I think even just sharing anecdotes go a really long way. Like the one that I honestly come back to most often is just showing the fact that we aren't cutting corners in ways like our bottling facility. We
Mhm.
swapped out all the plastic PVC pipes for stainless steel pipes. And we did that and we paid for that because we did not want our water to touch plastic once throughout the entire process. Right? Like don't have to do that, chose to do that because we want to be sure that there's no microplastic contamination. We want to be able to truly tell the customer that from the minute that we take that water out of the ground to the minute that it gets into the bottle that you're drinking, like there has not been one point where there's been plastic that's touched your water. So I think those kinds of stories like really matter and understanding that this is like a small team of super hardworking humans who are trying to bring this to life and thinking about every one of those steps like goes a long way.
Totally. Talk about Sprouts a little bit. So I think you launched Amazon nationwide and then a few select California natural channel retailers at the same time. Walk me through that thought process around that sequencing. Why those two channels first, and where do you go from here over the next year or two, let's say?
Yeah. So, yes, as I mentioned, Amazon was one of our first channels. It is our only like e-com channel. We don't sell direct to consumer through our website. We don't plan to change that. We appreciate the fact that Amazon has this massive distribution and ease of discovery there. And so we're trying to take advantage of it. And again, that was purposeful to be able to make sure that like we could get into anybody's hands who was interested in trying our product. Starting in California, our plan really initially was, hey, let's launch in San Francisco and let's launch in LA and use those as two test markets where we spend a good amount of time there really trying to penetrate those markets, trying to learn as much as we can from the consumers, trying to build some brand awareness. We'll be patient with that build. And when we feel like we've got enough of a data story and a case study there, we'll choose another promising market to open and we'll, slowly kind of build from there. The demand was so big so quickly and we sort of just realized like, oh, everything about this opportunity and this timing and this placement and the product that we've developed is like on fire right now that we've accelerated quite a bit of that
That's
plan,
awesome.
which is an amazing, yeah, amazing problem to have because the problem is now that we're just, trying to keep our feet underneath us. And we're doing a good job of that. Like we've got enough experience on this team to really be able to scale very well. But we opened up New York way earlier than we initially had planned on doing. We've been live in New York City for a little bit over a month right now. So if you're in New York, you're going to find us all over Manhattan and now up and down the Hamptons, which is awesome, fun timing for the summer in the Hamptons. Like we're everywhere there. And then getting our first national retail account 6 months after launching is like absolute dream. That's incredible. And we're so excited about that. We were slotted, off cycle with Sprouts and not through their forager program, like throughout all almost 500 stores nationwide. And so we're very proud of that and like really excited that they are early partners of ours. We do have some other national retail accounts that will be launching later this year as well. So our goal right now is to continue to scale really effectively, to really lean into this natural grocer channel, which we know is a core audience of ours, and continue to just basically like get the word out about Loonen existing and do that really well with all of our distributor partners and these new national accounts. And I'd be like totally remiss if I skipped over the fact that it's these local spots that are truly helping us like build this brand, right? Because it's all of these independent grocers or small cafes or restaurants who, have taken a chance on us early on, who have brought us into their communities that are really helping us get that strong early adoption.
Yeah,
And that's an area where we just all so recognize the value of those partners to us and how important they are. And we try to make sure that they feel like that, they see that importance, shared back to them, in that we spend a lot of time out in the field, right? Like I'm our VP of marketing. I am not really on the sales team. I am out in the field selling all the time, like at least once a month, but more than that.
totally.
We now have it as like a team policy that if you are going to be a new team member that comes on, you've got to go do route rides in one of our key markets to start so that you
Totally.
can meet the teams that are getting us on shelf and working really hard every day. And you can meet these store managers and learn their names and like figure out where the shelving situation is and like how do we continue to get Loon in great placement. And I think that is something that can be skipped at this stage of a business or can be thought of as not being necessary. And it so is. And so I think that's a place like our focus will continue to stay in those areas of like making sure that we show up with the people that are helping us grow as people, right? And not just as these huge organizations where they don't have a face at all and you don't know who's behind their water. We want people to know who's behind Loonen.
Scaling super rapidly. What does that look like from a supply chain standpoint and the spring water stuff? That spring in San Diego, near San Diego, has, X amount of pressure. So this means you can fill X amount of bottles. Like at some, like you guys have some sort of number in mind, or you understand that spring and what its capacity is before you need to look for another one.
Yeah, springs all do have capacities.
Yeah.
You can overtap from a spring, and essentially what ends up happening as you do that is that there isn't enough water in the spring to be going through the true like natural filtration process of the rocks and the mountains that exist that makes spring water a purer water than like tap water. And so we're very cognizant of that and we work really closely with those partners. And again, that's a big part of the reason why we are unique in that we are not stuck on a single source or to the point where if we're growing really rapidly, we're going to end up compromising the quality of that spring to try to meet demand. So we have multiple other springs that we've already located and found and labeled as like, okay, these meet our standards and we will get ready to open them as we need to. Like there will probably be another spring that's open by before the end of this year
Okay. Wow.
for us. Yeah. And again, that's crazy fast, but that's because we've got this incredibly experienced team that like has all of these great relationships and knows how to think forward like this, right?
Yeah.
And again, like I
Imagine,
know,
yeah, imagine David's ops skills definitely come into play there a lot.
oh my God, there's nobody better, nobody better. And like with all of the different brands that I have seen over the course of my 15, 20-year career, and I know I'm still building it and I'm on the younger side of it, but I've worked with a lot of brands and a lot of founders. And sometimes you got this amazing product and just like not a killer team where you're like, they're not savvy enough or they're not sharks enough or they're not aggressive and we can't like quite push the speed enough. Or it's the opposite. You've got this like amazingly incredible smart team and just a bad product fit. Right. And I feel so lucky to be on this team right now where both things really are aligned very well. I love this team. I find everybody on it to just be like incredibly impressive. And we all have the same mindset of like how hard we are willing to push right now because we believe in the product that we're building. And I think the product is really solving a problem. So yeah, I mean, It's those two magical kind of pieces that if you can get them together, you got something special.
For some other brands that are putting a big focus on Amazon, just from a tactical standpoint, what does your Amazon playbook look like just in terms of what you felt like moves the needle the most in terms of optimizing just the listing optimization, the Amazon ads platform, A plus content? What's the things that are top of mind for you guys that you're feeling is having the biggest impact on the Amazon channel?
Yeah, totally. We spent a ton of time getting our listing ready and our strategy ready, and then it's continued to evolve and shift since we've been live. But I think one of those things was just doing a lot of research within the space and recognizing how are other brands that are moving product well within our category showing up. What does the consumer care about that they need to be able to see quickly within the first few slides of your carousel on your PDP to like stand out and show what your differentiation is, right? So we did a lot of research, and then I think we have such a strong brand to be able to then stand on that when we bring that education into carousel PDP format on Amazon, again, it stands out, it looks clean, it shows what it is that we stand for as a brand really quickly. So I'm very proud of our listings. You can go check us out on Amazon and see what we look like there. But that I think was a big important part of it. And then we've experimented with things like our 2 SKUs that we have right now are still and sparkling. Both of them are in a 750 milliliter bottle. We had them split as 2 separate listings to start, and now we have them living under a single parent listing, right? And like that's been a positive for us in that we're able to send all of our traffic to a single PDP, and like then the variant is really easily discoverable, especially in an area where like still is the default product within water set. And again, that's another hypothesis that we were initially wrong about. Like I thought that sparkling was going to be a bigger chunk and still is our winner. We're seeing that shift a little bit as the weather's getting warmer, like
Mm,
sparkling starting to take a bigger slice. But yeah, that's been an interesting piece. And then to be honest, like we had way more planned of having to back with advertising on Amazon. And we've been so fortunate to be able to have this growth that we have had in our first 6 months be almost entirely organic. And
amazing.
so we are driving so much organic traffic to those pages that we have not had to spend aggressively on our advertising there. And now we're very purposefully keeping that tempered, right? Like, okay, yes, we want to make sure that when you search for Loonen water, you can find us as one of the top products right away. But that like is essentially the max of what we're trying to do there. And we're focused instead on our organic presence and making sure that the people who we know are going to enjoy Loonen, are going to care about us and are going to want to share about us to their communities, have access to us, and then an easy way to be able to point them to, okay, Amazon is a place to be able to find us. So
Yeah.
I think that's kinda like the quick and dirty there, but it's been a really helpful tool as well to be able to learn about, like, core customer demographics and reviews, right? Like, what are people
Yeah.
liking? How can we improve on our bottle? You know, like, that's a direct line of communication with your customer. So even though retail is gonna ultimately be our most important channel, like, it's gonna be the place that we have very healthy margins, we just learn a lot about our consumer through Amazon. So it's very valuable in that way.
On the brick and mortar side of things, what's your launch playbook look like? Or let's just say for Sprouts, what's your launch playbook looking like? And in general, so far, what have you found is having the biggest impact in terms of driving trial and velocity? And I guess maybe as part of that, definitely curious about the demo side of things. Is the water category, how big of a place does demos play? So I'll let you take that however you want, but we'll go from there.
Yeah, demoing water is an interesting one, right? It's water, right? So like what's so exciting about that flavor?
Yeah.
And that is definitely something that we're navigating right now. When you try Loonen, the amazing like crisp taste is definitely noticeable. And for people who like to name themselves as like water connoisseurs, you can totally taste the difference between a different set of water. Loonen has kind of ruined water for me in that like nothing else tastes as good anymore. So I definitely recognize that as well. But it's not something that I think we're getting a huge amount of like massive traction from sitting out and doing, taste testing outside of the front of a store. There will always be a place for that because we want to be able to educate. And I think that's the piece that's important is that we want to show up to select demo opportunities to be able to educate directly with a possible customer about why they should be thinking about water and like what we're doing differently and a little bit less about like, hey, can't you taste how great this is? It does taste good though. So I think demoing is definitely portion of it, but it's a smaller portion of it. I think, leaning back to what I mentioned previously about really being out in the field, that is a huge part of our playbook. We just launched Sprouts. We are about to spend 3 weeks as a team of 8 blitzing as many stores nationwide as we possibly can. And so we're spending our first week out in Southern California. We have all of our route rides set up. We are going to visit all of the top Sprouts in the area. We are bringing merch. We're going to go talk and build relationships with these store managers, find where we are placed, and make that personal connection. It is going to be a very long, tiring 3 weeks of this. And then when we're done with the Southern California area, we're all going to split up and we're going to hit other locations, right? So that's a big part of our playbook, is getting out in the field, making those connections with the people who really strongly impact how you're showing up on shelf, right? Like if you don't do that, nobody else is going to be able to do it the same way, right? And there are lots of other groups that you can hire to do some of that for you, but there's nothing like meeting people who are part of that founding team.
Totally.
So that's a big part of our playbook, and we've done that in every market that we have launched. So we did that in San Francisco initially, we did it in LA, we did it in New York, and now we're doing it nationwide with Sprouts. And then I would just say organic social has been a huge part of our strategy. We've known from day one that was going to really matter. It's, again, another direct line of communication with your customers. And it's a really great way for us to be creative with how the brand comes across. So we've been doing, each one of these market launches on social, and then really kind of celebrating the people who are finding us in those communities and enjoying us. And again, we have done all of that organically. We've had a lot of really incredible people shout us out to their communities with kind of astronomical numbers when you look at how many millions of impressions we've gotten in the first 6 months. We have paid 0 influencers to post about us. And so that I think is very special. It is coming off in a way oh my gosh, there's so many people talking about Loonen right now, which is great. And we're so proud of that. I'm really happy about it, but none of it is paid. And so ensuring
Awesome.
that, again, we get out to those communities that we know are going to enjoy us has been a big part of launching in new markets, and will be the way that we launch other products and SKUs in the future too.
From a distributor and a broker standpoint, brick and mortar retail is still somewhat early for the channel. But what's the distributor strategy looking like thus far? And is anything you found unique about what distributors are looking for? What feel like they've shared in terms of what moves the needle in terms of distributing water versus other categories?
Yeah, we are taking both a regional and a national approach to distribution. So we've got some really great regional distributors who have been partners in helping us get launched in those areas. So, for example, Good Stuff Distributor is our San Francisco distributor. They're such an amazing partner to us. They've really helped us get the ball rolling in San Francisco. And we have similar in LA. We're just launching with LAD right now. And in New York, we have signed on with Big Geyser. So we've got these regional distributors who are helping us just crush those markets. We're also working with Kehi, who's helping us with national partners like Sprouts. So it's a combination of those, right? You really need to be able to do both if you want to be able to scale across both regional and national locations. And again, it's about building those relationships. But I think the demand for glass bottled water has been so high that it has been an area where in certain markets and with certain distributors, it's been just a little bit of a simpler conversation. Big Geyser was an example of that. They really wanted a new glass bottled water, and we came in at a perfect timing with really great differentiation, and they have already placed us absolutely everywhere, right?
It's
So
awesome.
it's a combination of both, but this is my first true beverage experience. I'm coming in with probably the least amount of beverage experience of this group,
Sure.
but with a lot of marketing experience and a lot of experience in CPG. And so I'm learning very quickly from the rest of our team who is more experienced on this, just how important distribution is and those relationships with your brokers. We're working with CMG. They have been great. They have been very integral in us getting up and running with Sprouts. And yeah, that's been one of my most eye-opening, I think, learning so far, is just how layered each one of these elements and markets is, and how you have to think about each one of those relationships as being so important and then navigating them smartly. So yeah, that's again, that's how we've been approaching it, and it's working well so far.
You touch on David Kimmell a bit at the beginning. Definitely one of the more well respected beverage ops people in the market today. What have you learned from David so far about scaling beverage brands that maybe isn't super obvious the average operator wouldn't know about, or yeah, things you would have never learned without working as close to David as you've had the opportunity to do?
Yeah, I think I look to, again, I keep saying the same thing, but it's like so important. But I look to David as just such a good beacon of like the importance of relationships. Like he has been able to call up people that he has worked with previously and make things that should take us 6 months take us only 6 weeks, right? Like, that is incredible, right? And it's because everybody loves David, and he is totally a man of his word, and he when he says he's gonna do something, it gets done. So, we're setting that standard across the entire company and, like, making sure that we can all live up to that. But the other thing is that I'm seeing him do is he's really thinking like years out in advance. And he's
Yeah,
thinking not just how do we make sure that this production run gets enough product that we don't short any of our distributors, which obviously like is a priority. But he's also thinking big picture and long term, like how are we going to make sure that we choose partners in our bottling facility that are going to allow us to scale to different SKUs, right? So that we don't have to completely shift our
yeah,
entire strategy when we're growing and we're getting ready for that. Or things like how are we going to ship to all of these different locations and be thoughtful? Like the way that he led all of our box design for our 6-pack was like masterful, right? Because again, glass is heavy, glass breaks in transit. And we now have this like bulletproof box that we've built that
amazing.
looking at the way that like we worked with the box manufacturer and the like the packing and our 3PL, like all of that was just really, really thoughtful and making sure that we're not like again skipping steps or jumping over important details that end up having like long-term ramifications down the road.
Yeah,
So I'd say those are a lot of them, but then him just being smart about how we're sourcing these different suppliers too. Like for example, this is a custom glass mold that we have right now. And it's currently like we're shipping them in from Mexico, but we're going to be bringing it in domestic. And so he's been thoughtful enough about that too, of like, how do we find a domestic partner here that, can give us a good price that we know is going to like make a great product that we can grow with here and is like always thinking those few steps ahead.
looking ahead, say this time next year, and then 5 years out from there, what does success look like for Loonen?
I think, one way as an athlete, I've always liked to make sure that I'm thinking about the process just as much as I'm thinking about the result that I'm like trying to hit, right? It's so easy to just say, like, hey, here are the numbers that we want to hit, here are the total number of doors that we want to be in.
Yeah,
And
sure.
those things are all important, right? Like, yes, we want to continue to grow our national presence and we want to, have great revenue numbers. Sure. Every business leader wants that. But I think from a process standpoint, like it sounds cheesy, but it's actually real. Like we want to see a standard in this industry get elevated. And like we're hoping that by showing up and saying there is a different way to do this and this is what the consumer expects and we're going to show up and be the first ones to really do it right. We hope that others follow and like this category continues to evolve and shift. You see that in every other category, right? You see that in organic food, you see it in household cleaning products, you see it in clean makeup. Like once a leader came in and set the standard, others have followed and given the consumer more choice. And that's a great thing. That's a good signal for the market. It's good signal for consumers having power in their spending and also like for us prioritizing health. Because in a lot of ways, sometimes it feels like are we alone in like having to make these health judgments for ourselves? And if we can kind of get a swell behind it, that is backed by other brands that care, like that's a big positive, right? And I would love to be able to walk away from this project feeling like we really had impact in the industry in that way.
Yep. Last question. What do you feel like is the, I don't know, biggest risk or unknown thing that's keeping you up at night right now?
I would say just the fact that like pretty much everything I'm doing within this is like my first time doing it. That keeps me
Totally
up a
fair.
little bit.
Yeah.
But we have such an amazing team and so many like great advisors that I can call up and basically be like, okay, how did you do this when you launched in Sprouts, right?
Yeah.
Like, what do you see the difference between Sprouts and Whole Foods being? How should I think about us expanding to Target one day, right? Like, I can call them all up and get their points of view and like lean on them for that experience. And I like to think I'm very coachable and that I'm a quick learner. So, in those areas where, I am a little bit less experienced, I've got a lot of experienced people around me. But yeah, I just think like, especially being a brand that's had so much exciting growth so early on, it's like you feel like they're will be a target on our back maybe, or a bit of like, just more eyes of like, what are we doing? Because we've had so much positive momentum so quickly. And I want to make sure like we just continue to do things the right way. And I know we will, but it's nice. It's like pressure is a privilege. And I feel
Totally.
a little bit of that. Yeah.
That's yeah, higher stakes means is a privilege, right? Yeah,
Yep.
totally.
Definitely.
Well, yeah, Sarah, this has been awesome. This has been awesome to learn more about Loonen. What's the best place for people to follow along with you and all your expertise in building brands? And then what's the best place for people to follow along with the brand right now as well?
Yeah. You can go find the brand in Sprouts or on Amazon. Our
Perfect.
website, loonen.com. So you can find us there as well. On all of our social handles, we are at Loonen Water. And then you can find me. I'm somewhat active on the internet as well, just at Sara Hendershot. And yeah, I like to share some like behind the scenes about what we're doing as a brand as well. I'll definitely be sharing a lot about our Sprouts blitzing this month. So you want to see that in action, you can follow along there too.
Awesome. Well, yeah, Sarah, I think that's the pod.